The new NHL season is here. The LA Kings are playing on opening night, and longtime TV analyst Jim Fox is here to talk about that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, and I'm a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. I am very excited to welcome back to the show longtime LA Kings TV analyst Jim Fox as we get ready for the 2025-26 NHL season to get underway. Jim, thank you for being here as we embark on another journey with the LA Kings. You've been a part of many of these journeys before, different expectations for different seasons. I guess I'll start with this. Where do you feel the Kings are as we start this journey?
Well, Eddie, the way I'd like to answer that question is this. The Kings are good. The Kings have been solid. They've proven that. The last 4 years in the regular season, the best 4 years the Kings have ever had, back to back in their history. They got a good mix of veterans with youth, but good is not good enough right now. They have to find a way to get to that next step. So I think what the Kings have done in the summer has certainly not gone out and made big splashes in free agency or signings or trades. But what they've done is look for fits, players that they feel fit an area that the Kings need to be solid in, improved in, those types of things. So I think most people see the Kings as a playoff team. I do too. I was asked a question the other day, where do I give me a wild card right now and I'll take it? I mean, that's the way I look at things, just because, I think there are teams like Vegas that are a little bit higher than the Kings. But I think they're a playoff team. And I think, to be honest, Eddie, I think this year, if the Kings get down to the trade deadline and they're a playoff team and they're a lock to be in the playoffs, I think they will make a big move, a move they have not made in a long time. They will look to really add at the trade deadline if they're in the mix.
Well, certainly as far as numbers go, there were plenty of additions this offseason. A couple of forwards in Corey Perry and Joel Armia, a couple of defensemen in Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci, also a backup goalie in Anton Forsberg. And of course, there was a significant departure in Vladislav Gavrikov, kind of along the lines of what you've been saying, supplementing the current roster. Will that be kind of the best way to sum up this group of additions?
I'm just going to go with what I think. And with Gavrikov gone, I think his biggest impact was on the penalty kill. So with the Kings, they went out and got Ceci and Dumoulin, two guys who spend a lot of time killing penalties. So again, it's back to that fit. Where was the hole created? Because Gavrikov was not re-signed. And where can we make that hole a little bit better? And I think the Kings feel they've done that with the acquisition of two veteran defensemen. So yeah, supplement, yes, I think that's what they're trying to do. Again, there's not a lot of – the Kings have been – if you look at the numbers, you take the analytics, you go deeper. I mean, the Kings they're right at the top in a lot of areas, home record, shot suppression, goals against, chances against, all those types of things. What they do hope is that the addition that took place last year, trade deadline on, the Kings were the second highest scoring team in the league. That's not just power play. That's scoring any type of goal. So Andrei Kuzmenko's name has to be mentioned. A full season with Kuzmenko. Again, he's not an addition in the offseason, but maybe that full 82 games can provide enough of that jump to the offense that they need.
So there are some new faces, but a lot of familiar faces. And we know one of them is calling it a career after this year is future Hall of Famer Andrei Kopitar. Kind of let that out of the bag before the season started. Certainly bittersweet. I think all of us who have been along this ride with him to see his career feel fortunate to have seen it. The way he's carried himself has been as good as it could be. I think we're sad that it's coming to an end, but also, and you know this obviously as a former player, a lot of times players don't get to write that final chapter for themselves. Sometimes it's forced on them, so to speak. So I think happy that Anže is getting to end his career the way he wants to on his terms. I know you and I love when you say it because it makes me feel like I might know what I'm talking about. Both think that he's the greatest LA King of all time. And of course, there's qualifiers to that, but just your thoughts on what an amazing year, or excuse me, career it's been for Kopitar, and this being the last season for him.
Yeah, Eddie, the way I start that is just 20 years with the same franchise. I mean, that's tough. I think he is the best player to ever play for the LA Kings. Again, part of the qualifier is with the King. I mean, Gretzky's name comes up obviously, but I think I look at Wayne as an Oiler. I think he ended up spending the same years with the Kings and the Oilers, but he won 4 Stanley Cups with the Oilers. So, that's where you. Now, Marcel Dion, was he a more dynamic player than Anže Kopitar? Yes. A better goal scorer? Yes. Dave Taylor is just, as a former teammate, there's no one that did, and he played every single game for the LA Kings. Dustin Brown, Drew Doughty probably enters that conversation. But I don't think anyone has played at the level consistently, offense, defense, size, skill, everything. 2 Stanley Cups. I think he is the best. I'm talking about franchise, best of the franchises had. I think for the LA Kings, he's been there. How sad am I? I'll tell you at the end of this year, because if it ends well, then we can all just smile and cry, happily cry on a positive note. But yeah, it's something. And I think he did it very smartly to announce when he did, because his contract was coming to an end. The questions would be there. So as much as possible, limit the distraction. And I think Anže did that. He talked about the family. He talked about another thing. I think that one of the most difficult things is what you have to do in the off season to prepare for the upcoming season. And I think that if there's any area other than spending more time with his family, I think if you asked Anže that would be the next factor. Just, can you do it? Can you do it one more off season? I think Anže said, you know what? This is enough.
We in the media and as fans kind of come up with storylines. Sometimes it's cooked up, sometimes it's not. You've been in those rooms before. Do you think the kind of win one for Kopi thing could be a real thing? Is that something you think players will think about, or is that something that we kind of talk about?
I think they will think about it. I think it's not on the forefront of your mind right now, but as the season goes along and we get down to the playoff race, and if I think it does become part of it. I think it's something you think about. I think once you get into a game, I don't think there's a lot of time for thinking about that type of stuff. Are you going to go and block an extra shot because it's on? I think you're going to do all those things anyway. But as far as focus, I think yes, I really do think the players will be thinking about that.
We know Ken Holland is in as the new GM. I know he's talked about one of the things for this team to get better is that growth from within. We've talked about the additions, the veteran, but Quentin Byfield, Brandt Clarke, Alex Ferrier, maybe even an Alex Turcotte, guys that have been here now for a little bit, grown, and there's expectations, right, for these guys this season. How do you think those younger core guys can really contribute this year and make it a better year?
Yeah, the first name that comes to mind for me is Byfield, because he took the step last year. I think, do you consider that a breakout year? I'll let other people to decide, how much his point production increase, all those types of things. But I think he still has to, what he has to do is maintain the 200-foot focus that he's learned from players like Kopitar, to understand how important the game is without the puck. But at the same time now, Eddie, this is where the jump he has to keep increasing his production, goals, assists. Like, that doesn't win the game at the end of the year. He needs to be at a certain level. And I think he's talked about shooting the puck more. I think we saw last year, he worked so hard on his shot that near the end of the year, he started scoring goals that had nothing to do with skill and power. It had to do with an improved shot. And he has to have that mentality. He's talked about it. Fiala, who he plays with, they kind of overpass it, shoot the puck more. So I think that's the first guy. Byfield, his production has to increase offensively. Does he have, we said it last year, I'll say it, he has to be, and I think there were times last year where he was the number one center. He was more productive than Anze Kopitar. I think that has to go up a notch this year. He has to be the unquestioned number one center. And I'm sure Anze's going to have an argument about that. He's going to be in there to make sure, but production-wise, who's going to be that guy? Brandt Clarke, from where I sit, I see the skill. I want the reins completely taken off. And then if you're a coach, you have to see it a little bit differently. You have to just bring them along slowly. They did so, but just a couple of things, limited ice time. Under 17 minutes, he was the second highest scoring defenseman in the league last year. Under 20 minutes, he was the fourth highest. So the skill is there. And it's no longer, Eddie, the cliche is, young defensemen have to learn when to join the attack and when not. No, Brandt's past that. He has to just learn now value. Where can I bring value? And I hope a lot of that is opening up to allow him to go and show that a little bit more, because I think he does have the skill, and the Kings don't have a player like him. He's unique back on the blue line. They don't have a player with that skill set. And as a group, as a team, the Kings have to find the best way to maximize that skill set. And that's not green light every shift, but I think it's green light more than we've seen in the past. So I'll start with those two guys.
We'll get more into some of the team aspects of the Kings. Jim already touched on a little bit of the power play. I want to get a little bit more specific into that. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is here to make sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you'd like to bet. Player props, same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday or your Monday or your Thursday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. We are continuing with longtime TV analyst for the LA Kings, Jim Fox. Of course, will be a part of the FanDuel Sports Network broadcast all season long. Jim, you talked a little bit about Andrei Kuzmenko and the power play, and certainly he seems to be a key component of that. But the 5-forward power play unit that the Kings will apparently employ with that first unit, how rare is that these days? I know that it's not, things are not as traditional as they used to be, and we'll talk about that with the second unit as well. But the Kings obviously were 27th out of 32 teams last year in power play percentage. You mentioned how it went up once he joined. How does his part in it and that 5-forward unit, how does that kind of all fit now that we think we're going to see that to start the season?
First of all, he's a right-hand shot, and that's what the Kings were looking for, down low position, ability to shoot or pass. He's proved in the past he can be a shooter too. Eddie, I think that'll be the biggest challenge for that group. Who's going to be the shooter? It doesn't have to be the same guy every game, but the overpassing situation is something. I think when you have 5 forwards, right, you have 5 guys that think the game creatively. I think when you normally have a defenseman back there, he is your quarterback, but he's also your shooter. So now you have 5 shooters. So you should be saying they're going to be fighting who's going to get the shots. A lot of times it turns into overpassing because they look across and they see 4 other options that are as good as them. So why not use those options? So that would be the biggest challenge. The one thing I love about Kuzmenko is this. Even when he's so-called stationary, he's still moving the puck. He's stick handling. He's moving his feet. He might not be changing position quite a bit, but he's making the penalty killers think, he's going to go backdoor. He's going to go to the blue. He's got so many options going on. He's the biggest key. The biggest key to that power play is Kuzmenko because he proved it last year. He came aboard and the numbers started to go through the roof. So keep going there. The second unit, you touched on it. I think it's unique a little bit because, the 5 forwards is still unique. Maybe 2 other teams that might try it every once in a while, as opposed to the Kings that basically that's their default. So I think it's still very unique in the NHL. To have 2 defensemen on the second unit might be a little unique. But having said that, Brandt Clarke's not a defenseman. In that situation, he's not. He's a rover. He can do whatever he wants. He can keep pucks alive. He can use his skating. He's not another defense. When he goes out 5-on-5, I'll call him a defenseman. When he goes out on the power play, he's a rover. He can do whatever he wants. So it's a different look. It's almost a completely different look from Unit 1 to Unit 2. And I think that can be an asset too, because, other teams, they have to pre-scout. They have to try to figure out what's going on. But if you can throw something that's completely different from Unit 1 to Unit 2, I think that can help your team.
We know the identity of the Kings is strong team defense. And I think when people on the outside looking in, they see Gavrikov leaves and maybe in their eyes, they didn't replace him with an equivalent type of a player. Do you think the team defense that the Kings employ helps them to absorb a loss like that on the defense side of things, to where maybe it would be more difficult had they lost a key forward and, the offense isn't what their calling card is necessarily?
Yeah, I think if you talk to Kings defensemen, anyways, played on the Kings, they understand that the forwards are so committed to that team defense that does become the strength, right? The sum is greater than the parts, whatever that, you have different things going on, but when you put it together as a group of 23 on your roster, they all kind of maintain that same concept of defense first. The Gavrikov thing, no. Dumoulin, replace him. Be better than Gavrikov. Why don't you? Dumoulin led the New Jersey Devils in ice time in the playoffs last year. Why can't he just keep doing the same thing with the Kings? I mean, I'm discounting because I think last year, Vladislav Gavrikov was the number one defenseman on the Kings. He was the number one guy. Drew Doughty, because of the injury, that allowed that, but he took over. But I'm looking at it the other way. Cody Ceci comes aboard. Again, he's not going to be doing the same types of things, but again, a fit. You lose a penalty killer in Gavrikov, you get a guy that's used to killing penalties. Most block shots of anyone last year in a penalty kill situation, Cody Ceci. So you find a fit. But to me, I'm looking to Brian Dumoulin from what I've seen from him so far. Of course, when he was in the East, you don't see him that much. I've seen him a couple times, and I think he can fill that role.
I think it's a fair point too, because how many people thought Vladislav Gavrikov was going to be the Kings' best defenseman going into last season? So as you said, stepping up, getting an opportunity and making the most of it. Maybe a guy like a Brian Dumoulin could do something similar. We'll see. Obviously the Kings had terrific goaltending last year. Darcy Kemper, I think, surprising all of us by being a Vezina Trophy finalist. He is 35 years old, 50 games last year. There were a couple of minor injuries. Anton Forsberg comes in as the backup. How do you see the tandem this year for the goaltending for the Kings?
Yeah, Eddie, this is the way I look at it. And I was just asked a question recently on another podcast. And I brought up as one of my biggest concerns was the goaltending. Why should I say that? Darcy Kemper was the most consistent player on the Kings team last year. So why am I doubting that? You just talked about the structure. The Kings structure is probably made for goaltenders, right? It suppresses shots. I mean, but it still is a concern to me that Darcy can come up with the same type of season. He played a limited amount of games last year because of injuries. A couple of times he went down. He was on IR a couple of times. I think he can still play the same amount of games this year as he did last year because the Kings have more confidence in Anton Forsberg. So I think he can fill in more, and Darcy will be as fresh as he was last year. Last year it was because of injuries. This year will be because of more of a supporting role from his tandem, his partner in goal. So I think that could be a positive. I think that's something, I think there were games near the end of last year where the Kings, they wanted to get second place, right? They wanted to get home ice advantage, and they were in for first place there a little bit there. 10 games left in the season. But they went with Darcy. They went with him. They kept going because I don't think they had the trust that David Rittich could do the job. So I think this year, I think that will change. If everything goes normally, I think Forsberg will be more of an option to spell Kemper when he needs it to keep him fresh.
All right, we're going to get more into the start of the season, the schedule for the Kings to start things off, and also a new partner for Jim Fox in the broadcast this year. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com, and you'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we're wrapping things up here with Jim Fox, who you can see all season long on the FanDuel Sports Network with a new partner, as I mentioned. We'll ask him about that in a second. Jim, though, I wanted to ask you about Adrian Kempe, clearly a very important part of the Kings. We know he's going into this final year of a contract. We've seen some pretty wild things with the UFAs. Kirill Kaprizov gets that $17 million a year deal, and then Connor McDavid goes with the team-friendly deal, although $12.5 million per season certainly would be nice. But everyone right now between the two sides, Kempe and Ken Holland, saying all the right things. It seems like Adrian wants to stay. It certainly seems like Ken Holland wants to be here. Are you optimistic that this is going to get done sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think that, Adrian, if you were to ask me right now who the best player on the Kings is, I would say Adrian Kempe. I would say right there, if Kevin Fiala can play like he did near the end of last year and into the playoffs, then Fiala is giving him a good run for his money on the most effective player on the Kings team. Again, we talked about Byfield. We want him to elevate. But, yeah, with Adrian, I think he's at that position now. Again, because of the Kings structure, right? Adrian probably doesn't get as much offensive production as he would on another team. So you don't get those numbers, and all of a sudden, when you go to contract negotiations, it doesn't add up with other guys around the league, right? Adrian's a 75 point, not a point per game, not a 100-point guy, those types of things. So, but I think they can find a way to get it done. I don't think Adrian has any issues with the group, what's going on right now, who he's played with, all those types of things. I think it's going to get done, but that's, like you said, we've had some weird things happening, on the free agent market right now. But there's no agenda for Adrian. He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Like, for instance, another free agent will be Kuzmenko at the end of the year. I think he has to prove something. I think he started it last year. He's bounced around in his early NHL career. I think he wants that to end. He wants a team to bet on him and stay with him, and that team could be the Kings. But Adrian's situation, I don't see the same way. I see it as he doesn't have anything to prove to anyone. But it's weird, Eddie. Different players are affected differently by these types of situations. And I really don't know how Adrian, is it going to become a distraction? When you go into every game, where's his focus? Some players can put it away, no big deal. Some players can't. Some players, it'll be in your subconscious. And it'll be bothering you, and you don't realize how much nervous energy you're wasting because you're thinking about it, even though it's not on the forefront of your mind. So let's get it done as quick as possible. I don't think there'll be an issue, but if there wasn't an issue, it'd be done by now, right?
True. Real quick on the Pacific Division, you already mentioned Vegas. We know Edmonton. I know some people are wondering about the Ducks, a lot of young talent there, but is it maybe too soon for them to be talked about amongst the top three? Does it feel like it's kind of the same top three again for this year for you?
I'm hoping, like you said, I did think I'll take wild card right now.
Just get in.
The reason
right?
is that I don't want to go through the angst and pressure and nervousness that it takes just to get in. So let's get in. But every year, if you look, I guess we were just talking about it historically, there's two teams in each conference that didn't make it the year before that end up, and so you have to switch in. Calgary had 96 points last year, and they were 1 point away from the playoffs Pacific Division. I don't think they're going to have the same type of season production-wise. I don't think they're going to get that many points. Vancouver is probably the biggest wild card, where they were there chomping at the bit a couple of years ago and lost to Edmonton in the playoffs. And Vegas, I'd like to say we're with their head and shoulders right now. Now they lost Pietrangelo, so that's going to be a hole, but their depth is pretty good. Then it's Edmonton and the Kings. Edmonton finished behind the Kings last year. I think Edmonton is not as good right now as we look at their roster now as they were last year. That's my opinion. I don't think they have as much depth. So now teams like Anaheim are going to get more points. There's no question. We just played them in the preseason, and their top 9 forwards now are legit, way more legit than they've been in a long time. So they're going to steal some points here and there. I would say the Kings are a top 3 team. And Eddie, I think it's important for the Kings to finish more than other teams. Like Vegas, as long as they make the playoffs, they feel they can turn it on, flick the switch, and Kings aren't there. But I think the Kings I think it's important for them to finish second or first. I really do in the Pacific. I think that's on their mind. I think it's more of a confidence boost than anything else. It's not home ice advantage. It's not those types of, it's just do we belong? And one way to prove that is to get home ice in the first round.
Well, the Kings are certainly going to get tested right out of the gate. Back-to-back games on back-to-back nights, Colorado and Vegas. I mean, that's 2 teams that could meet in the Western Conference Finals. You've got 12 games in the month of October, 8 are on the road, and 7 of them against playoff teams. So the Kings, I would imagine, I don't know how much players look at the schedule, but if they do, I would have to imagine that they're like, okay, this needs to be, we need to start off focused. I know every team does, but you know what I'm saying? This is not going to be an easy first month for LA.
I asked Jim Hiller that question today as we speak. And he says he has discussed it with the players. He has talked about it. Now, I led with this, Eddie. I said, every team wants to get off to a fast start, and everyone says 1 game at a time. But with the level of competition the Kings are going to meet early this season, has that changed? Yes, they have addressed it. They know what's going on. I think the Kings got down to their 23-man roster faster than any other team in the league. And I think that's part of it. They understand that they just got to get it in place, and they've got to be ready to start the season. The Kings have to be at their best to start the season. They can't just muddle their way in. They can't just feel their way in this year. And it's because of the level of competition they're going to see early. If you do come out of that, then again, back to that confidence issue that will build. And the reason I'm bringing up confidence, Eddie, is because of the way the season ended last year. And if anyone says, okay, yeah, that's yes, it was. But I think the Kings were there. They were right there, and they didn't get it done. And they've got to find a way to regroup and get that confidence. And I think one way would be a great start. You mentioned it. Every team says that. Got to get off to. I think it's way more important to the Kings this year than any that. It's a pretty tough schedule when you take a look at the winning percentage of the team the Kings are playing.
I'll get you out on this, Jim. New partner for you this season, John Kelly, longtime voice for the St. Louis Blues, unexpectedly becoming available. You've had a chance to do a couple of games with him. How's the chemistry going? How are you looking forward to that this year?
Yeah, I've known John for a long time, so I I love it. And, Nick is retired, and, so I just love that John ended up being available. Our industry is going through some changes, and it happened in St. Louis, and they went to a simulcast. And then, what do? They probably go with the least expensive option. And that's where John, with his seniority, had to move on. And I'm just so happy that we were able to get him. I think the Kings fans will love him. I think he has great power to his voice. I think he has a real good, lively call to the game. Chemistry, I'm not even worried about that. That's something that it does take time, and I think it's gone good through 2 games, but there's going to be a couple of games where, it just doesn't, but that we'll get through that. I don't know if there's a better option that would be available than John Kelly for the Kings. And I'm just, again, we're very fortunate. I'm very happy it ended that way. Just to note, I've asked the Kings to back off a little bit. So Tony Granato is going to be doing some games. Ray Ferraro is going to be doing some games. Jarrett Stoll is going to be doing some games as analyst. So I'm really not sure if you can find a stronger team when you're adding a Granato, you're adding a Ferraro, you're adding a Stoll. I mean, that's good. But the play-by-play guy is always the anchor, and John Kelly is an excellent anchor to have.
Well, you are an excellent analyst. There's no doubt about that. We've been fortunate to have you as Kings fans for so long. Jim, we'll be watching FanDuel Sports Network. I know your first broadcast will be in Winnipeg coming up on Saturday. Looking forward to it. That's obviously going to be a tough game as well, but looking forward to hearing you and John Kelly on the call all season long. Always thank you so much for doing this, and we look forward to checking in with you as this journey gets going for the LA Kings this year.
Eddie, always a pleasure. Love talking hockey with you. Always a pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. For you everydayers, those who listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, obviously coming up on our next show, complete recap and analysis of the Kings season opener against the Avalanche, and also get ready for that second game against the Golden Knights as well. Of course, we have our fan feedback show at the end of the week. Anything you want to talk about, email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you're always welcome to post your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. Stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.